Internet. It is I, InsaneLayne, here with my first thoughts on WestWorld Season 1, Episode 3. We open with Dolores and Bernard. It's been 3 cycles since their last chat, and he makes sure no one's been messing with her programming. He then hands her a copy of Alice in Wonderland. Subtle. Subtle. Here I was attributing the blue dress to Belle. No, she's Alice. Whatever. He points to a passage about change, and she says, yeah, that's like all the books that you bring me. They're all about change. You know, what exactly is he trying to do here? We don't really know. But she does mention that, or he mentions, I think, that he has a son, but who is somewhere else that she couldn't understand. And then Dolores wakes up like a normal day, except it's not, because she finds a gun in the drawer that then magically disappears after she has a flashback to Black Hat Guy taking her to the barn from the first episode. With the gun gone, she just puts her shirt in the drawer and goes to town, like always. Where we meet, yay, Jimmy. Thank God he's still in this show. Like, we don't see a lot of him at all in this episode, which I wish we'd seen more of him. But I think he will be very important. Excuse me, next episode. Because he gets a good setup later. He does get to play the hero a little bit, you know, when somebody starts shooting things up in town. He even gets shot, but thankfully the holodeck safeties are on, so he's fine. And, you know, after failing spectacularly to be the hero, after not dying, he gets a second chance and he actually saves the girl, who's one of the prostitutes who, of course, offers to thank him good and hard, but he's still, he's still White Hat Jimmy. By the way, if he has an actual name in the show, I haven't caught it, so I'm just calling him Jimmy, because the actor is Jimmy Simpson, and he's awesome. So then Black Hat Buddy shows up, and basically all they've been doing for the last few days is, you know, Black Hat Guy's been having sex and drinking, and White Hat Guy's been bored. So he's like, let's do something. Let's get out of town, go on a real adventure. So they're gonna go bounty hunting, and we also find out that Jimmy is about to marry Black Hat Friend's sister. So I guess this is maybe like the bachelor party or the like pre-wedding thing, but consider this. The guy brings the man about to marry his sister to a place where you can fuck anything and kill and torture and do anything that you want. This is either really twisted or brilliant. I mean, if you really wanted to know the character of someone about to marry your sister, this kind of is the place to bring him. So Black Hat Guy might not be quite as stupid as he looks. Then we have Boss Lady and Bernard talking about how weird Ford is being. He's been up to a lot. He's taken over a huge area. He's disrupted other storylines, done damage to them, and they've said in previous episodes that that was like what he cared about the most, that the guests were always having a good time and taken care of, and nothing disrupts their adventures or their stories. And now he's completely disregarding all that and just plunging ahead with whatever it is that he's doing. We have Tech Girl. We get her name later, but for now she's Tech Girl. She's still looking into what happened with the guy who massacred them all with the milk, and she realizes he was talking to someone. She's got HD vid of everything. Apparently every second in every room of the entire park is somehow being recorded, and, you know, she's got it on her little hollow tablet. So, yeah, she's figured out that the guy doing the killing was killing hosts that had previously killed him, like some kind of twisted revenge, as if he remembered and was taking retribution. This is the theme, of course. The hosts are starting to remember their previous lives, and it's affecting their behavior now. But Bernard says, you know, this is not your job. You have actual real work to do. We have a host who's wandered off. Go find it. And of course she gets in the elevator with the Spec Ops guy, and they do some not flirting. I don't really mind this relationship if it becomes one, because they're kind of cute together. Though he is very, like, you know, not a lot up here. At least not right now. Teddy is back in town, and he is a gunslinger, which is apparently what he always is. He runs into Maeve, and she remembers seeing him when they were all being cleaned and redressed, but this doesn't seem to affect her this time. She doesn't go crazy or anything. She just carries on like normal. I think that's the only time we see her this ep. Like I said, this show jumps around a crazy amount, so we don't get a lot of time with each of the characters. They kind of get like one scene. Most of them only get one scene, very short one. Teddy then repeats the interaction with Dolores of picking up the can and returning it to her, and they go through their usual pattern of, they ride off and look at some fields, and they talk about their future together. And Dolores is a little different this time. She wants to leave Sweetwater. She's basically starts begging him to take her away, and when he says, "Yeah, someday I will," which is made her happy last time. Now she's like, "No, you never will. Something is wrong." Um, but he says, I have to be a good man to earn a woman like you, and I'm almost there. I just gotta leave like one more time, and I'll come back as the guy who can marry you, because that's his story. Um, and of course, they go home, and gunshots are heard, and they ride in, and I assume things play out much as they did before. Then we cut to more hosts being built, and again, Ford. This theme of Ford watching these new hosts being built. What has he done to them? I really want to know. And Ford's talking to Teddy, and he lays out that the reason we don't know what Teddy's mysterious past is and what he's got to go off and do, or this sin that he has to erase, is because pretty much they were too lazy to write one for him. It wasn't necessary at the time. But now they're going to give him one, because Teddy is basically a placeholder. He's the good guy gunslinger who has, the hot girl waiting on him. And if guests feel like taking down the good guy and having their way with this woman, that's basically what the storyline is. And keep in mind, this makes Dolores' character so creepy, because she's just this, like, sweet, innocent farm girl whose only purpose in existing in this world is to be murdered and raped by the guests. So, yeah, good thing they make them forget. And they make points out of this later. But Ford says, we've got a backstory for you, Teddy. Finally, you're gonna have your real mission and a chance to become the good man. Apparently, this involves a backstory with a villain named Wyatt, who is a crazy army sergeant. We get more on him in a bit. Then in town, we see Dolores being harassed by some new guests to the park. I'm not sure who's real and who's not out of this group, but the one guy who's definitely real, I think, says, I just wanted something easy. He doesn't want to get into a gunfight with Teddy, who has shown up and is wearing a new hat. But Dolores still has the hots for him, so this time when they ride off, he's very different. He's not talking about the fields and the trees and someday I'll take you away. He's teaching her how to shoot a gun. Only she can't do it. She can aim and fire, but she can aim, she can't fire it. And the weird thing is they cut to a close-up of her finger on the trigger, and it appears, maybe this is bad close-up, but it appears that her finger is fully depressing the trigger, and given that the gun is a mechanical device, it would then fire. Regardless of, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Regardless of her intent or programming, her finger is depressing the trigger on a mechanical device. It should fire. So that annoyed the fuck out of me. But it's one of the few little things that they get wrong, and it could be a mistake. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't know, really. I mean, does she have to think for the gun to fire? I don't think so. It's probably just a mistake. Then we get more of Teddy's new backstory, and we learn that he was army buddies with Wyatt, and Wyatt got, lost or separated from them, and he came back very crazy, and he started doing crazy things, and somehow Teddy left the army and he's now a bounty hunter, and for some reason it's his job to go after Wyatt. For some reason that's the guilt that he has to overcome to be the good man and marry Dolores and blah blah blah. Then we get a brief moment with Tech Girl and Spec Ops Guy, which I'm now calling Team Tech and Spec, and he's smarter than her, because earlier they were looking around at the campsite where a bunch of hosts had gotten stuck because the host that ran off was the only one who can handle the axe, because the axe is a weapon, and the boss lady has insisted on limitations on which hosts are allowed to handle weapons and which ones are not. And since the only one that could chop the wood ran off, the rest of the guys have been sitting there in a circle arguing about who's going to chop the wood for 2 days. So they shut them off and leave them there, and they go looking for the stray, but they see that the stray has been carving these things, and he's carved symbols of some kind into them, and Spec Ops Guy is smarter than Tech Girl because he recognizes a constellation when he sees one, and she doesn't. Then we are over to Ford. He's acting a little crazy himself. He goes off on this guy who is, I think, just cleaning one of the hosts, and he's put a cover on him just to because the hosts are naked. And Ford's like, why did you do that? They don't get cold. They don't feel modesty. They don't feel shame. And then he cuts the thing's face just to make his point. They're not real. But it's clear that the it's not entirely the host's modesty. It's the other guy's modesty too. And so what? He doesn't want to stare at robot penis. Can you really blame him for this? Has no woman working there ever had a problem with having to stare at dicks all day? Because I would. I would have a serious problem with this setup. Okay, so the modesty isn't just for the host because they don't feel it. It's for the people working with them too. And the fact that Ford doesn't get that, or that's like irrelevant somehow, I don't know. Something's either something's off with the character and they're going to play on it later, or it's just deliberate oversight on the show, which is kind of dumb if they don't ever address that at some point. Where are we? We get a lot of backstory. Bernard and Ford go down to Ford's sanctuary, and I love the wall of faces behind him. It's very Game of Thrones. The room of faces with the towers. He's got a whole wall behind him. It's very awesome. And I love all the old stuff, and you see like little robots and miniatures and like previous incarnations of stuff. And he's got the piano player always, which is awesome. And they talk, and he tells Bernard some stuff. Because Bernard tells him, the hosts, the ones that are going crazy, they're talking to someone. They're talking to someone named Arnold. And he also kind of calls Ford on some of his shit. It's like, what is really going on here? You're up to something. So Ford hits him with some backstory. That they had a pattern in the early days. And you had a partner. I can't read my own writing. He had a partner in the early days who was playing with the patterns of the robots, is what I was trying to say. But over time, the partner basically got pushed out of the picture. Ford sort of became the face of the company. The investors liked him, the stockholders. So the partner got pushed out over time. But his name was Arnold. And apparently life was much better back then, Ford says, because him and Arnold got to spend their days creating the robots and improving the technology. He didn't have to worry about boardroom meetings or deadlines or stockholders or anything. Just creating and improving the bots, and that's what they want to be doing. Arnold apparently wanted to go further. He wanted to bring the robots out of the uncanny valley. He was one of the first to start trying to program them with little things to make them seem more human. And he had some theories on how artificial robots could achieve some version of consciousness and thus sentience. Is kind of what he was going for. But early on, they did do some experimenting with the hosts where they made them sort of hear their instructions and their programming, but they would think that it was the voice of God, and hopefully over time, I believe, if I'm following the theory, would internalize that to become a form of consciousness and a type of self-direction within the bounds of their programming, I would assume. So it's a very high concept like idea. It's very complicated, certainly, and they tried some versions of it. But really, imagine what would happen if you were hearing voices in your head and you thought they were God, and they're telling you what to do all day, every day. Yeah, it was a fucking disaster. The host went crazy, so they scrapped the program and went to the more, conventional programming that they have now. But this is where the idea for the control commands come from. The Goodnight command and the Violent Delights command, I'm sure. But I think that is either something that, like, Arnold wrote in a long time ago and Ford knows how to trigger it, and now he has. But because we learned that Arnold is dead. He died in the park. I'm almost convinced that he's the incident from 30 years ago, of course. And he apparently pulled a Henry from FNAF and let one of the hosts kill him. Ford says, don't worry about all the strange stuff, Bernard. It's just, it's leftovers of Arnold's program. I'm on top of it. I'll upgrade them. It'll be fine. I'm on it. You just, you go back to the real world and don't ever forget that the hosts are not real. And also says Bernard's son is dead. He just kind of throws that out for no reason. Like, there is no reason for him to put this out here. None. He just says it. And he's like, I guess that's really hard for you. What? What? Okay. And then we have another scene of, we follow Bernard, and he calls up, I'm assuming his wife, played by Gina Torres. Nice to see her. She looks really good. We get to see her for like 10 seconds. They have a mushy, sentimental conversation they don't really give a fuck about, and it doesn't lead to anything, so fuck it. Then we're back to Team Tech and Spec, and they are the worst at their jobs, ever. Like, everyone here is just terrible at their job. These guys have been in the park for hours. They've been in there for an entire day, and they still have not caught up to the host they're chasing. And they have video. They have surveillance constantly. They can see exactly where he is. Why did they enter so far away from where he is? Why don't they have a car or a horse? Okay, you can't have a car because it's the old... Why don't they have horses for themselves so they can get around faster? You're chasing a guy who's running by walking, and you're miles behind him. Like, what is going on? But they do finally catch up to him, and the host seems to be trapped down a crevasse. He's stuck. So they're like, alright, we found him. Then we cut briefly to Teddy and crew. They've ridden off out of Sweetwater. A bounty hunting crew came and got him and said, we know where Wyatt is. And he turned to Dolores and was like, I have to go defeat this great evil and come back and marry you, little lady. And he rides off. So he's off looking for Wyatt's men. They get ambushed. Wyatt's men apparently like to wear burlap sacks over their heads and make themselves look like monsters or something. I don't know. It's pretty hokey looking, honestly. I don't care for it. So I'm glad we don't stay with it long because we go back to Tech and Spec, where she's trying to be the sensible one and says, you know, it's dark. He's down a crevasse or something. I can get a crew out here in the morning to retrieve it properly. But Spec Guy says, no, I brought my muscles out here. I need to use them. So Tech Girl's like rolling her eyes, but she leaves a voicemail for Bernard, and this is where we see her name pop up. Her name is Elsie. Random side note, I was doing a creative writing assignment once, and I wrote a character with the name Elsie, and I was forced to change it for two reasons. One, I had a very dumbass English teacher who said that it was not a real name, and that you couldn't just make up a name. All names are made up, asshole! Somebody made them up in the first place, then they got passed on, and new people make up new ones. And it was already a real name because I'd heard it somewhere. So yeah, random side note with the name Elsie. But nice that she finally has a frickin' name. So, where are we? Oh yeah, she can't get a hold of Bernard because he's in with Dolores again. He seems to be making a very great habit of this. Like, he's doing this frequently, and I'm wondering, how is nobody noticing that she keeps going missing? Like, we see there are people in the control rooms watching all the time, and she's one of the main hosts who is designed to interact with the guests on a daily basis. So I would think they'd be watching her pretty closely all the time. Bernard, after, realizing that he's been treating Dolores a little too real, and he's not quite sure what he's doing with her, or if he should be. He remembers Ford made a point that it would be cruel to let the host remember what's done to them. I mean, remember, Dolores' character is there to be raped and violated. That's her character. I mean, he doesn't want her. It would be cruel to let her remember that every night and then have to relive it at the same time. That would be just the worst. So they need limits, and he's considering basically resetting her back to default programming and not this experimental version that he's been playing with. And he starts asking her questions about, does she like being able to feel the things she can feel, the remembering sometimes, but she can't answer him. She doesn't have the information really to put an answer together for him. But she does talk about wanting to find out who she really is, and that when she does, she'll be free. Which is an interesting concept. And she can't explain where this thought comes from. It's just there. And he decides he's going to keep going down this whatever dangerous path he's on. He's going to stick with it a little while longer. And he sends her back in. But, something interesting. He makes her promise to stay on her loop. Huh. Why would he need to make her promise that? Is she capable of acting outside her programming on her own volition? The only time we've seen her do it so far, the digging up the gun, and then we'll find out later the gun in her drawer, she did something with it. The only time that that happens is when the man's voice comes in and tells her what to do. Now, is that man Bernard? Because possibly. Is that Arnold's voice from old programming? Is it Abernathy? Also possibility. But is she capable of acting outside her loop at other times? Is she now aware that she's in this loop and it's repeating and she's having to force herself to continue reliving it because she knows what's going to happen? Yeah. We'll get more in a minute, but yeah, some level of that. So yeah, oh my god. Let's see. She goes back in. She's walking through town and she doesn't get about 10 steps before one of the guys returns from Teddy's ambush crew. He came back and brought the newcomers back to town because the guy was like freaking out, saying, "This is too intense. I didn't want to get shot at. I just want to come here and have some fun." So they rode back to town. And she finds out that Teddy is dead. And so she rides home alone, again finding the cows loose, signaling that someone is playing Black Hat and they've come to murder her family and have their wicked way with her. And she starts saying the line about Daddy wouldn't let the cows out loose this close to dark, and she stops in the middle of it, realizing that this is the loop repeating itself and what's happening. And she forces herself to finish the line and then ride towards the house. But Dolores she's having some trouble because she gets to the house and she gets captured by the group of guests / newcomers we've seen. I'm not sure how many of them are real or not. But she's flashing back hard because she sees the dead father, like always. But she flashes back and sees Abernathy from before and remembers being dragged to the barn before. And one of the guys does say, I'm going to take her in the barn and have some fun. So he drags her and throws her in the hay like always. Only she finds the gun is there. She must have taken it from her drawer and hidden it there earlier in the day, knowing that that is how her day is going to end, that she's going to be thrown into that hay where horrible things will happen. So she's hidden the gun there to protect herself. And, but we have the same problem as before. She aims it at the guy, and you can see she's straining to fire it. She's trying to fire the gun. She can't fire the gun. She can't do it. She's not programmed to be handling weapons or using them. That's not in her character. But then, while she's struggling to fire and she can't, she flashes to a different guy. It's not the current guy standing in front of her. It's Black Hat wielding his knife, and we know he's been coming to see her for 30 years. So if she's ready to kill anybody, it's that guy. And she does. She shoots him. She shoots at the image of Black Hat, which then cuts to the real guy. I don't know if he's real or he's a host, but she kills him. She shoots him through the neck. Blood. He's dead. Now, has she just killed a real person? Maybe. Either way, she's acting way outside her loop. She's not supposed to have a gun. She's not supposed to be violent. She's not supposed to be capable of violence. Even within the world, remember, she can't hurt a fly. Till she could. But she rides off. She manages to get away. And we get a brief cut back to Tech and Spec. And they, yeah, Spec Guy is about to prove that Tech Girl is actually way smarter than him because she had the good sense to say, we should come back in the morning. But no, he's already, got his ropes out. He goes down where he decides to cut the host's head off? Huh? I need an explanation here. What the fuck? Why? Just why? Why not tie a rope around the whole thing and bring it back? I mean, they put it in sleep mode, so it's just a statue at this point. So why not just tie a rope around it, hoist it out of there, and bring the whole thing back? Or put it into, some kind of default mode and have it climb out and walk by itself. There are so many other options. Why do you have to do so much damage? It just seems so unnecessary. And so, of course, he's got a saw, because he's going to saw the head off, which is bleeding profusely, and it's gross. And, you might want to look away, little lady, because he actually says that to the tech girl. But it's just so dumb. And, of course, the host bot somehow wakes up and instantly climbs out, and it seems to be going after Elsie, and it picks up this big rock, like it's going to smash her, and then it smashes its own head instead. repeatedly smashes its own head until it falls down. Big what the fuck. But then we get a last second jump to Jimmy, our good buddy Jimmy, and his Black Hat friend. They've built a campfire, they're in the middle of nowhere. Black Hat is bitching because he'd rather be at the brothel. He drops the hint that this place costs $40,000 a day. In case my phone overrode that, I'm going to say it again. This place, WestWorld, costs $40,000 a day. Holy shit. That is a lot of money. Think how much money Black Hat, the main Black Hat guy, has spent. He's been coming here for 30 years. I have no doubt it was cheaper like 30 years ago because inflation, but still, he must have spent not just like millions, multiple millions of dollars, possibly tens of millions of dollars coming to this place. So I think that I could definitely be driving him a little bit. So they're kicking it around the campfire, chilling on their bounty hunt, when Dolores rides up, and she is very much worse for the wear and collapses into Jimmy's arms. And now we got some adventure. She's acting completely outside her loop. She's run into real guests. She's altered the storyline of the other guests. She's possibly killed someone. She's now crossing into a bounty hunter story that she's not supposed to be involved in. So there's a lot that I think will get touched on in the next episode. I'm not finding the series as compelling as I want to be, but at least it is getting a little more interesting. We have some of the hosts acting outside of their norms. People on the staff or various people on the staff are doing various things to affect them. Ford, of course, is up to something huge that I can't wait to see. And on the whole, it is improving, I would say, but there's still way too much jumping around. Like, there's characters we didn't need to see, quite frankly. Like, the whole scene of Teddy in the brothel talking to Maeve. It's one short little 60-second thing that we don't need to see. There's nothing in it that lends to anything else in this episode. You could easily have moved that to a different episode where we see more of Maeve, and it would make sense. Again, it's the show wants to check in with all of its characters every single week, and that's a huge, huge mistake, because you don't have time for that shit. And your other characters that actually have plot points and storylines to pull this week are getting shortchanged and coming off as disconnected and random because you're not spending enough time with them. That, I think, is the biggest failure of this show. They don't take their time. They're trying to do everything in every episode, and that's just not what you do when you have not just a massive, huge ensemble cast, but you have a massive, huge ensemble of storylines, all of which are very, very different, unique, and separated from each other. So you really gotta spend time. You can't, when it's too much jumping between worlds too quickly. You can't get into any of it, and it just makes it hard to follow sometimes. So other than that, though, it is a very good show. Again, the costuming, the special effects, not so much the drama, because I don't find it dramatic at all. I don't find there's any tension to the show at all. So it's just a fun, kind of mindless romp thing for me. But I am looking forward to seeing episode 4, and of course the rest of the series, which I will be doing my first thoughts on very soon. But until then, I am InsaneLayne, and this has been my first thoughts on WestWorld Season 1, Episode 3. Bye-bye.